Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode, special interview with our pal. Well, I'd like to call him our pal, Joe Lyons from 350 Spin. And we got a lot to talk about. Hopefully a lot of branding, a lot of advertising, and a lot of things that maybe could benefit us. Probably a lot of people that watch maybe benefit you. So we'll start off by letting Joe take the floor and tell everybody all about his stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. I'm a creative director, which is kind of like a different way of saying an art director. And in the design industry, it's kind of like the person you hire that comes in and has the vision of how something should look, as opposed to like a graphic designer who might say, well, tell me what you want it to look like and I'll make it. All right. So I started off as a graphic designer, started my own company 23 years ago, and just kind of worked my way up in my own company, working for myself, giving myself some good promotions. So now I'm a creative director and absolutely love what I do. The company is Spin 350. Yeah, reverse, but Spin 350 Creative. That kind of comes from everyone asks what that means. So I have a background in music and DJing, and that's the spinning. And then 350 was just always my favorite number, but I could never have it on any of my sports jerseys. I was always 35 or 50. So when I was younger, I said, someday I'm going to have my own business and I'm going to put 350 on the sign. So when I started the company, I said, well, I have to do it now. So I put those two together and, came up with something unique that there's not going to be any other Spin 350s. So that's where we are today.
Very cool. Very cool. And you want to start with some questions for your Joe?
Sure, man. So take us, start us off from where it began at Bridgewater State College, Bridgewater State University now, where you and I met. I mean, let's take it up. I mean, it's funny
so
story. Joe, funny story. When you hit me up on Facebook, it's hilarious. I never knew what your first name actually was until you hit me up on Facebook like 15 years ago. I had to scroll through Facebook and I'm like, who is this guy? I'm like, I know his face. And then I had to scroll through. I saw some of your DJ stuff and I was like, it's Snoil. Oh my God.
That's funny.
They never called you by your first name ever. And I knew you for 3 years. I never knew what your first name was.
That's so funny because you're not the first person to say that. I'm like, well, that's kind of funny. I mean, a lot of people have nicknames, and I never realized that. I guess I went by the nickname, which you're saying is Snoil, which is Lions backwards.
Yeah.
So Snoyl. But yeah, so God, I mean,
man, go dive deep, man. We have a long time, so talk about yourself.
Yeah.
Man. This is exciting stuff. Like, so take us from there.
So
talk about your Eminem days, the stuff with Mike G from the Beastie Boys. Take us from there, man.
Oh, I wish the Beastie Boys. So the background, kind of the cool background story is that I always knew I wanted to do something creative. I just didn't know what that meant. Right. So when I went to high school in Brockton at Cardinal Spellman. Anyone from the Mass area knows Brockton. And while I was going to high school during the summers, I went to art school. I went to the Art Institute of Boston. Used to take the train in and go to the art classes. So by the time I graduated and went to Bridgewater, I had already done a full semester of art classes. So about 2 weeks into the semester, they said, hey, you have to drop your art major or you'll be here 5 years. And I was like, well, if I'm going to be here 5 years, I want it to be because I'm slacking off, not because of a technicality. So I said, all right, I can't be an art major. I'll be a communications major, which is what everyone does when they don't know what they want. So I became the communications major, which ended up being great because I had developed this interest in music. And well, I always had the interest in music, but I developed an interest in DJing and being able to mix one song to the next song and being able to take the vocals out of a song and put them over a different song. It really interested me. So I showed up at Bridgewater with my 2 turntables and
a microphone.
And a microphone. I had this ridiculous, I built this thing on wheels that it looked like, if you ever go to like a wedding and the DJ has like a setup that like pops open. I had built one of those, which was very large and bulky, but it was on wheels. And I remember wheeling this thing into the dorm room, and my roommate freshman year was like, what is going on here? And that's what I did. I played with my music all day, kind of taught myself how to DJ. Some kind of dumb luck, just by chance, I ended up at the college radio station. Went up there with a buddy who had an internship, and the person whose show it was never showed up. So I said, oh, I know how to use this equipment. So I said, let's do the show. And the station manager called me the next day, and I'm like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I shouldn't have been touching anything. And he said, hey, do you want a show? And I said, okay. And I think my first radio show was like a midnight to 2 a.m. on a Sunday. It was something silly. But that kind of got my foot in the door, because it was being able to express my artistic side through music. Right. So I really loved doing that. I was the only person at Bridgewater who had a show for 4 years. I eventually became the music director. And that's when stuff got real fun, because as a music director, you start getting invited to shows, and they're sending backstage passes, and you're getting invited to sit in on studio sessions. That's how the whole M&M thing happened.
That's so awesome, man.
Yeah. So one of our mutual friends, I don't know if you knew this, Ed, but Kim, who's Shaggy's wife now.
Okay.
Kim had a car, so I didn't have a car, and I was like, hey, can I borrow your car? And she's like, yeah, what do you need it for? I'm like, well, I'm going over to my friend's house who's got a studio, and Eminem's gonna be there. And she's like, shut up. And I was like, no, I guess I don't know what the plan is, but they invited me to come over and kind of sit in on the session. And she's like, okay. So I always told her, I was like, yeah, I'm like, we were hanging out in the driveway, and Eminem was sitting on the hood of your car. She's like, oh my God, that's amazing. But it was kind of cool. He was an interesting guy. Spent like 4 hours in the studio with him. Just we were interviewing him. He was freestyling. He was wasted. Just getting tons of good audio. I rented one of those huge camcorders from the media services department at the college, and I filmed the whole night on a VHS tape. And the next day, before I even watched it, I put it in the mail to a company that was doing a documentary, and never made a copy.
Oh,
a couple weeks later, they call me. They're like, when are you going to send the tape? I was like, I sent it. You didn't get it? And that tape has been gone.
Wow.
Ever since. So if that ever turns up, it's going to be pretty cool, because it's just hours of footage of Eminem in Boston, and it's just having a good time.
That's awesome, man.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the music side of things kicking off at Bridgewater.
That's awesome. I know Andy said so. Andy's gonna want to ask this question, because I mean, look, him and I, we're big Beastie Boy fans. So I mean, so take us through that, how that worked out and everything like that. Because I mean, you did some stuff with Mike D, right?
No, the only connection there was Mixmaster Mike came to Bridgewater.
Okay.
For Springfest.
Okay.
That was cool, because I got to be the opening DJ every year at the Springfest concert.
Right.
And that would have been, I think that was my senior year.
So
Run DMC came, Mixmaster Mike.
Yeah. Okay, that's my mistake. Sorry. So,
no, I wish I had gotten to be on stage with those guys.
Yeah, because that could turn into a bunch of other Beastie Boys stories.
Man, I miss the Beastie Boys.
Oh, don't we all? Don't we all? Not to segue away from that, but great documentary that the two remaining guys put out a year or two ago. Great watch.
Yeah, on Apple.
Yeah, that's a great watch.
That was really good. Music's changed a lot. I was kind of at the end of a generation of actual turntable DJs with vinyl. Everything transitioned into at the time it was Serato. Now there's like a mix of things, but you'd have one record and it was an MP3 encoder. So you'd have the record on the turntable and you could scratch and mix and do all the things, but you never took that record off and changed it. It just fed the music into it. And I've never used it in my life. because I kind of got out of it right around that time, because I was doing mixtapes, and mixtapes used to be a huge thing. And now,
Still
I
work.
mean, yeah, everything's digital. But I actually had I had a distribution deal with a record label, and my mixtapes were like all over the world. It was cool because I was doing this while I was in college, so it was great to have that income and be able to see my stuff in places. But then everything started getting weird with piracy and copyrights, and then everything switched, like the whole Napster. And I kind of stepped back and was like, well, what am I doing? Am I I'm doing all this fun stuff with music, but I was already kind of getting burned out, because by the time I was a senior, I was DJing every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. And even after I graduated, I still DJed for a couple of years. And I think all it took was a few nights where I was DJing in Bridgewater at the old Bogarts, and then I'd get in my car
Bogarts,
and
man.
I'd drive to Saugus, and I'd DJ after hours from like 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. And I'm like, this is too much. Because I'm like, am I going to be doing this when I'm 40? It's probably not. So that's when I decided to kind of phase out the music and get back into design, which is
right,
where my real training was. So I said, I'm gonna see what I can do. I went back to school to kind of get the graphic design, web design certificate. Right out of college, I started working for an architect. My godfather got me the job. I worked in the mailroom making copies, and I was back in school, right? I was taking these classes, and I set up an appointment with the CEO, and I said, hey, you guys don't have a graphic designer. You should hire me. And he was like, what? Who are you? He's like, go get my mail. But he gave me a chance. He said, you know what? He said, yeah. He said, let's create a position. And this was in the summer of 2001. And most of the clients that this company had were in the Middle East. So 9/11 happens. It's just the economy tanked. These guys had to start letting everyone go. Of course, I was the first to go. So I only had a real job at the real world for like 2 months. So now I'm thrown out into this industry of designers and marketing people. And I've never really done marketing, but marketing people were trying to get all the graphic design jobs because they needed to get back to work. So I'm this guy with no experience in an economy where the bulk of the people that got laid off they were writers, they were designers, they were all the people related to marketing, right? Because when the economy tanks, people invest in sales. They don't worry about the marketing stuff or the design stuff. They just use what they have. And they say, we just got to, move the dial here, and we'll worry about design later. So I didn't know what to do. I went to some staffing agencies. I was figuring out what I needed to do. And they said, we've got a client in Cambridge that needs help with an email campaign. I had never done an email campaign. I was like, perfect, I can do that. So I took the train out to Alewife, which is the last stop on the Red Line. And I go in and I sit down with these guys, and he's like, we're trying to send this email to everyone on this list, but we don't want everyone on the list to see the other emails. And I was like, you mean like a blind copy? He's like, what's that? And I go, you paste it in here. He goes, oh, awesome. Thank you so much for coming out. We appreciate it. And I was like, that's it? He's like, yeah, just tell the staffing agency you were here 8 hours. And I was like, all right, well, you want me to do anything else while I'm here? And he said, any chance you know how to do graphic design? I said, as a matter of fact, I do. And he said, well, our graphic designer that we've always used just moved to England because her husband took a job over there as a teacher for 6 months. So we were trying to figure out what we're going to do. He said, you want to come back tomorrow? I said, sure. Came back the next day. And this was W.R. Grace, which is the same company that had all the issues, and they did the movie about it with John Travolta, but this was their construction division. So I was doing ads for construction products. Like, can you do packaging? Sure. Can you design logos? Sure. They ended up keeping me so busy that they said, we can't hire you because of the headcount. We're going to pay you through the staffing agency, as long as we can. And I said, well, how much do you pay in the staffing agency? Because I'm only making $16 an hour. They said, we're paying them 30. I was like, all right, well, why don't you just pay me 25? So I got a great raise. They got rid of the staffing agency. And then they were my first client, and they kept me so busy that I eventually hired 2 designers under me. And they said, you want to hire people, you project manage them, we'll give you all the work for the US, Asia, and South America. So I was cranking out hundreds and hundreds of projects for these guys. And they kind of catapulted my, me starting my own business. And that's how that started. When I speak at schools a lot, and students say, what path did you go? And my path is so non-traditional, because I didn't get a degree in graphic design and then start working at an agency and then eventually start my own thing. I had a communications degree. I went and worked in a mailroom. Then I had a position created, and I got bounced into a temp job that turned into a consulting gig, which turned into me really just starting my own business. And it's such a non-traditional path.
But I think, Joe, that sounds like a lot of people, though, because I mean, if you remember me back from college, I mean, I was a phys ed major, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I did an internship at the VA, and then all of a sudden, there I was working for the largest beer, wine, and liquor wholesaler in New England. And all of a sudden, 2 years after that, it was like, yeah, you're pretty good at that. Why don't you come up be an account manager for the largest import in the country? And I did that for 4 years. So,
Awesome.
I think it's one of those things where everybody kind of, you're kind of like, that it's kind of like the thing from Forrest Gump, with the feather in the wind. You just kind of sometimes you have to kind of go where the wind takes you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I never thought in a million years I'd be living in the South doing what I do now. So, I think it's that. I mean, I think would you pass that message on to the young people? It's like, look, you got to jump on opportunities that are given
Right.
to you.
You figure out how to make it work.
Ed, you worked at the VA. I thought you told me you worked with VD.
No, I went to the VA. No,
okay.
I think you got I think you got one of the letters confused, Andy.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm slow.
Yeah,
so
maybe you got hit in the face with with when too many of the rubber bands from the golf balls.
I think so. Yes. So Chris, any questions for Joe about his business or anything?
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Joe, Chris, nice to meet you.
Hey, great to meet you, Chris.
Yeah, man, I'm goon number 4 out of the 5 that are regularly on the podcast. So these guys brought me along. I love doing it. It's good times meeting people. It's good stuff. So I was just curious. Obviously, you've done so much stuff between Swayman, James White, Eminem, which we already mentioned. I know you've done a lot of work for like colleges, Northeastern University, Harvard. The music video for Jesus, also for a country songwriter.
Right. I didn't work with Jesus, but the song was called Jesus.
Yes. What was your favorite thing that you've done like all time, as far as like experience wise, and what about it like really made you invest like everything you had into that specific project?
Yeah, it's tough to pick one. I recently did some math, and it came out to over 6,000 projects I've done over the years. Now, I don't mean full scale. I mean like pieces of project, right? Like a logo, and then a website, and then a this. There's so many, but I would say at the top of the list, a couple that come to mind. You mentioned James White from the Patriots. He took over. It's cool how things come full circle. So he took over the Mayo Bowl, which was Gerard's like bowling fundraiser, which raised money for pediatrics at Boston Medical Center. And when he took it over, they needed, they needed the event branded, and they reached out to me. And I almost messed it up, because I remember I was at Subway getting an egg and cheese, and the phone rang, and I'm like doing this, and the girl saying something about it's a nonprofit event for James White and the Patriots, and she's like, we're trying to find somebody that can turn around the branding, and you were recommended. I said, okay, awesome. And then I said, let me give you a call back, and I never got her name, and I realized it was like a no number, like a And I was like, so I ended up figuring out and following up and being like, hey, yeah, I'm definitely interested and this is a nonprofit project, so let me kick back, half the budget and donate it back. And she was like, that's amazing. So my favorite part about this project was I got to design the logo for the event. So all the players, had the logo on their shirt, and it was on the step and repeat. So when Brady showed up the second year, I got, okay, so Brady's with James White. They're standing in front of the sign. I'm like, that's my logo, like right over Brady's shoulder. So that was, for me, that was super cool to have, my work in a photo with such a legend.
Absolutely, man. That's super cool.
I mean, that was a game changer. And I loved doing the nonprofit stuff. I try to do a bunch of nonprofit projects throughout the year. I just worked with Mass Fallen Heroes for their golf tournament. I've worked with, Dana Farber, as many as I can, as many as financially as possible, right? Because you got to pay the bills.
You got to eat, man, don't you?
You got to eat. I have two little mouths.
So sorry, that's the sales guy coming out to me, Joe. Yeah, you got to eat,
That was probably my favorite. I think my second favorite was Bostonia Public House. These guys were like, we want to build a restaurant that has a pre-prohibition Boston vibe. And I was like, all right, let's do this. So, I did a super old school, 1800s look and feel, printed the menus on old brown craft paper. Their business cards, I made them, were made out of wood. I did the bar taps, and that was a super cool. And if you ever get to go to that spot in Boston, it's super cool. Subway tile, big, tall booths. And then just recently, Bryan Cranston and Aaron
from Breaking Bad.
Yeah, they were there like promoting their tequila. So I'm like, those guys are in front of my logo. So I love that stuff, to be able to see these people with my design work. So those are probably my two favorites that I can think of for client projects, right? So what I ended up doing, and sorry, I feel like I'm just like,
no, this is about you, man.
No, it's all about you.
This is
awesome.
you.
All right,
this has something to do with us. We're just
that.
ad-libbing to you, man. That's all we're doing.
All right, yeah, because you guys are gonna have to cut me off at some point. Because I get so excited about these things. What was it?
We have a countdown for that, Joe. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I'll get an alert when we're running late, but that's fine. But pause that right there, because whether we make a connection or not, or Ed, we'll have to work on something. But we're on a shoestring budget here. I'd love to hire you right off the rip to do something for us, but just to get a extra amount of Zoom, I had to make a kitty for these guys just to kick in for us to get extra time. So
I'm glad you guys have the paid version of Zoom, because I don't. So this would be a 30-minute call.
Well, we had an interview that got cut off at like 29 minutes and 59 seconds, Joe, and it was kind of rude. The guy was awesome, and this guy Sean from Skate Weights, he was awesome. And all of a sudden, we're talking at the end, and all of a sudden, it was just like boom, gone. And so
funny,
we
like
made the executive decision.
As a small business, it's like, where can I squeeze pennies, right? And I'm like, do I really need to pay for Zoom? So like whenever I'm like, emailing clients, I'm like, yeah, just send over a Zoom link and I'll put it on the calendar. I'm like, hopefully they're not like, no, you send it. And then I'm like, no, you send it. But so Chris, to answer your question, or I guess I did answer your question, but what I was going to say is, when I started Spin 350, it became, this is my studio. I have one of the hardest things that I've ever had is, how do I explain what I do? Right? Because I'm not a marketing guy. I'm a branding guy. I don't own an agency. I own a studio. I don't have a team. I do everything on my own. So it's kind of like a hard sell sometimes, because people are used to, we'll come in with your team and we'll go over it. And I'm like, it's just me. And then some people are like, oh, it's just you. But then they realize, oh, well, you're the one that did the, all the work we looked at. Okay. And then they look at it different. But when I started Spin 350, I didn't know what it was going to be. I had mentioned when I was consulting, I brought on a couple freelancers. When I had the opportunity to buy this studio and stop working with that one client and say, I got to take this risk. Like, I knew what it felt like to be laid off and to kind of have everything pulled out from underneath you. I said, I can't have this one client. I've got to have another plan. So I said, I've got to open a studio. I've got to remove myself from Grace. As grateful as I was for all the work, I said, I can't be there every day because it's preventing me from going out and meeting people and finding other clients. So I'm going to open a studio and I've got to raise my rate. So they could have very easily been like, it's not going to work out anymore. And then I really would have been screwed. But I felt like I had to hire those freelancers as full-time employees. For some reason in my head, I was like, well, I've got a studio, I need employees. What ended up happening is I no longer was a designer. I was a sales guy. And my job was every day to find enough work for my employees to do. And I was like, this sucks. This isn't what I wanted. I don't think I ever wanted to be running a business. I just wanted to work for myself. So things kind of fell into place after a 2-year divorce and a lot of things that I was like, you know what, I got to let go of the people I have. A couple of them left. I had to let go of a couple. I said, I'm going to start over, just me. Spin 350 is just me. I'm doubling my rates. I'm only taking on better clients where I can do less projects and make the same amount of income as if I did 3 times as many little projects. Again, another risk, but without taking that risk, you can't really get to that next level of that sustainability, because it's really hard to, having a business like mine, it's 100% service based. I'm not selling a product where I can just make more. So the commodity is my time, right? So I've got to put enough value on my time where if I'm working a full week, I'm covering everything and being able to pay myself. So that's kind of how Spin 350 came to. But what I started to realize is, as much as I need the Spin 350 work, sometimes my passions were in the other stuff, the music, the collaborations, the like shooting that music video. And it's a different audience, right? So what I did is I said, I'm gonna start a separate brand called Every Day is a Canvas. And the reason I came up with that is because I wanted to kind of separate, like, Spin 350 Creative is my design studio. And this is where I work with Harvard, and this is where I work with like Bristol Myers Squibb and MIT and all these like big brands. They don't necessarily want to see like pictures of me and Eminem giving the finger. Right? It's like
Right.
and I don't want that either, because I'm like, how am I?
Not great branding, Joe.
I need to separate, right? I need to have 2 brands.
Right.
So I was watching Craig Sager receive the Jimmy V Award at the ESPYs. One of the best speeches I've ever seen in my life. And in that speech, he talks about, at this point he didn't live much longer after that. And he was talking about fighting cancer, and he had said, one thing I've learned from all of this is that every day is a canvas. It's an opportunity for living, for loving, for learning. And I said, wow, I said, that's kind of how I feel, because whether or not you're an artist, you kind of have like every day you get to start over, right? Every day is a new day where you can, clean slate. Don't worry about what happened yesterday. You want to do something positive, do something positive. You want to get out there and try something new, try something new. So I was like, let me put this together as kind of like a movement, I guess, in a way. So I started up Every Day as a Canvas, and that's where all of these cool projects are coming from. Like the projects I mentioned were Spin 350 projects, but all the other stuff is Every Day as a Canvas. It's, like you mentioned, Swayman. That was kind of a cool thing where I did a limited edition print for an event. that was, with the Bruins Foundation, and the guy putting it together said, can you make 10 of them and number them and sign them, and then we're going to sell them at the event, and then Sway will sign them. So like that was super cool, but that wasn't something where they like reached out to Spin 350 and said, hey, we have this thing that we want to hire you for. That was more of me being like, let's do a cool collaboration. And they were like, right on. Right. So I love doing those projects because that's where the passion is. When you spend all day long doing this like corporate rebranding and designing data sheets, and it's very tedious. And you have to be on. Like if I always try to explain it as when you're a writer and you're just kind of staring at the blank screen, like, how do I start this story? The work I do, I'm on average around 20 to 25 projects at a time is my sweet spot. So it's like, all right, I'm going to start this story. Okay, I'm going to start this story. Okay, I'm going to continue on this story. And I bounce all over the place with all different projects. And by like noon, I'm exhausted. And as I'm getting older, I'm like, I don't know how long I can do this because I'm kind of getting brain burnout.
Hey, great ad feature for Dunkin' Donuts for that spot right there.
I quit drinking coffee.
Oh no!
Okay.
But you know what's funny is I drink twice as much tea.
Okay.
So
Hey,
So
quick
that's-
follow up,
that's-
Joe.
Go ahead, Chris.
Sorry, just a quick follow up.
Yeah.
You touched real quick before about, having a couple of mouths to feed. Obviously, clearly you're a busy man. You got to, go out there, be a go-getter. Do you find like that balance sometimes difficult, making sure you make room? Of course, my kid, I have an 11-year-old, most important thing in my life. Obviously, my wife. Are you able to work out like a good balance where you're like happy with, the attention you give to your kids and family and so on?
absolutely. When my kids are 5 and 7. When my 7-year-old was born, I said, I'm going to be home every day at 5. I grew up, had a great relationship with my dad, but I had a dad who was gone 7 to 7. And he worked real hard for our family. He didn't retire till he was 78. And I really missed out spending a lot of time with him. We spent plenty of time together on the weekends, and every time he did projects, we were, listening to the Pats on AM radio, working out in his workshop or whatever. It was great. But I kind of made that commitment 7 years ago, and I've stuck with it. And as a single dad, I mean, the time that I have with my kids is the time I have with my kids. It's hard to have the schedule of, bringing them to school. So their school's 3 towns away. So I drive them to school. I get back home. It's 9 o'clock. I leave again at 2:45 to pick them up, and then I'm done for the day. So my day is like 9 to 2:30. In that time, I've got to get 8-10 hours worth of work done. So there's a lot of times like, tonight, if I wasn't on with you guys, I'd probably be working on some client work. I was doing some before we jumped on. And that's just, me figuring out how to make it work, because I've got a commitment to my clients to get my projects done. But that kind of works its way back to me because I've got a commitment to my kids to make the money from the clients to give the kids what they need. Right. So it's like, it's kind of like a weird, I'm not having a rough week and being like, well, it's all right. When I get paid Friday, we're going to hit the grocery store. It's all right. Well, if I don't get this shit done, I'm not going to get paid Friday or whatever. I don't have a routine paycheck. I'm waiting for this client to pay their invoice, and I still have to, figure out how to take care of the bills and the mortgage and all this other stuff. So it is stressful. And I think you have to really have the stomach to work for yourself. I've definitely had many sleepless nights. I've definitely had many nights where I second guess whether or not I can do it, because I don't think I have a business mind. I'm also, I'm kind of I'm a creative, right? So I'm introverted. I've forced myself to get out of that, out of necessity. But there's been plenty of people who have worked for me as subcontractors or whatever that I would never put in front of a client because they couldn't have a conversation because they're just super creative, nerdy, like let them just do their work and don't have them talk to anybody. Sometimes I wonder if that's more me. And then I have to jump on the phone or a Zoom, or not so much now, but go into a boardroom with all these people who are decision makers on this huge project, and I've got to sell them on it. All the while thinking to myself, if I don't get this project, am I going to be able to pay for my kids' soccer, or am I going to have to figure out so it is stressful.
But Joe, I have a
Doing
question.
what I like, that's the thing.
But Joe, but the thing about it is that to sell yourself and something that you're passionate about, it's that heart-mind connection when you sell. I mean,
Right.
so like if you're really passionate about yourself, I mean, it makes it really easy. If you really believe in your product, which funny story, when you're selling yourself and you're selling yourself, I mean, you have to believe in your product. I mean, that's sales 101. So that kind of correlates. And so, coming from a sales guy to you, I mean, that should kind of just say, man, it really shouldn't be that stressful because you're selling yourself, which it's easy because of the work that you do.
I don't
So
think I don't think the stress is selling myself. I think the stress is, am I going to get the project?
Got you.
Yeah.
Well,
Right,
I mean, there's always that.
There's a lot of people that do what I do, and it's getting harder every year with I've got to convince people to pay me a premium to design their logo, knowing that they can get their logo done for free from about 50 websites.
Right.
Right. And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about AI. AI, in my opinion, I mean, the train's left the station, so it's not like we're going to fight against it. It's going to go away. So I think the people that are going to survive that are in my industry are the people that figure out how to utilize it, which is what I'm doing. I use it every day, not for design stuff, but for the tedious. There's so much of the work I do doesn't have to do with design, right? Like if I'm building a website, I'm getting 5 different Word documents, an Excel spreadsheet, and 2 PowerPoints. They're like, here's our content, right? So I'm using AI to organize stuff like that and to proofread and to rewrite stuff, the content side of things. And then obviously I have to go back and check it, but that's saved me a lot of time on the tedious stuff. So you just have to figure out how to adapt. And I think you have to be able to say no to people. That's kind of something that I've had to learn as I've grown is, everybody thinks that graphic designers like do it for fun. Like, oh, I've had people say, hey, I've got this great project for you where, you can design a logo for us for free because it's going to look good in your portfolio. And I'm kind of like, trying not to be a jerk, but I'm like, I don't need help with my portfolio. Why aren't you taking serious what I do? Like, this is what I do for a living. And, that's always a challenge because everyone thinks they're a graphic designer. And everyone thinks that their input is good input. So there's certain projects that aren't good projects. I say no to friends a lot of times. There are obviously I help people out when I can, but working with friends and family sucks. So
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And the thing I like about the interviewing, I don't want to use the wrong term, small business.
Not a small business.
It's that kind of connection that you make as your journey through uncharted waters. You learn things and you talk to people and you surround yourself with people that if you have a question about, hey, how'd you do it? I'm so enamored with the whole story of how somebody created a business, worked for themselves, got away from that middle class rat race that we all get caught up in because it's so easy just to get that paycheck every week. And not to spin this away from your story, Joe, but I started this podcast with the hope of turning it into something bigger because I saw so many podcasts that I had listened to and I said, wow, I can do better than that. I'm fun. I'm funny. I know funnier guys than these guys. I have better stories than these guys. Why don't we just get together once a week and start talking about what we like to talk about, because we're not close anymore as far as seeing each other like we did when we were kids growing up. So let's stop like that and let's just make a half an hour every week and start talking, and then it's built into something, and then we go from there. And now, I'm looking to build it more as a, hopefully, business someday, where maybe I'm generating an income, monetize the website or the YouTube channel, where I can give these guys something back and say, not only thanks for your time, but come along on the journey with me and let's meet cool people. Let's meet like-minded individuals. Doesn't have to be a celebrity every week or something like that. Let's meet people that think just like us. Let's go on other people's podcasts and make connections. And so I totally love, your journey and your story. And I'm a dad of, these guys know I'm up. I do everything pretty much with the podcast, and I'm up to here. I mean, I went from Vermont last week to almost Connecticut in a weekend, and still met these guys for an hour and got it done. And so I know about the running around with I have a 10 and a 12-year-old, and they're both super involved with hockey, and I coach. And so I get the struggle. I get, and I'd love to be able to serve everybody, help. I'd like to start a business where I could take a ride with everybody that I truly love, and take them on a journey with me, and nobody would have to work anymore, and we could all just, hum along. But,
Sounds nice.
it's great just, making a connection that, I never even knew that Ed had a connection with you. And I just thought we were interviewing somebody new for the podcast. So it's a great story. And I'm totally zoned in when you're talking about intricate details of how you did this and that. So
Awesome.
Go right
Yeah.
ahead. I'm with you 100%.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me, because this is just like, when you work by yourself, you're not taking breaks, going out and, talking to your coworkers and grabbing lunch with your coworkers. So it's like, oh, people want to talk to me. That's, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's also hard finding people who, a lot of people are just, I hate to say it, but there's like a lot of dull people out there that aren't interesting. so when you're able to, watch a podcast or listen to something or sit down with people and throw around these ideas, it's great, because it kind of gives you some hope that there's actually still people out there that are interested in things.
Yeah.
Because I see, especially with little kids, and you get it, like you see kind of like where things are going, and you're like, does anyone go outside anymore? Does anyone go places anymore? It's just
Don't
like,
even get me started on that.
Yeah,
Joe.
we can talk about, I can talk, and Chris can talk from a coach's perspective, how kids have changed just with their attitude towards an adult. I mean, you got to be a Gen X guy. So that whole Gen X mindset, like you were talking about your dad, I spend a lot, you can ask Ed, my father was almost like everybody's second father or actual father. So, we had respect for everybody. I mean, if you were outside playing and you were in somebody else's yard, you had, or God forbid, you went into somebody else's house, which you were never invited into. That was like every family's fort. You might go in there to get, a drink of water or use the bathroom or something like that. And you were like on your tippy toes, because if you got in trouble there, you got even more in trouble when you got home, because there'd be a phone call home. And so you get, twice as much. And neighbors policed each other. They policed everybody's kids. And, you didn't, go ahead.
No, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. Yeah. That subject comes up all the time. Like in my personal life, being an older guy, I mean, I had my kids at 38 and 40. So, I am just over the 50 mark. We're all, Ed, this year too. So we're all just hit that 50 mark. So our perspective on everything is always Gen X. It's changed a lot. I mean, some things for the better. I mean, like with Corey checks and things like that. So there's no weirdos hanging around. But I mean, look when we were growing up in the 80s, all the, child abductions and things like that, how that's changed and how that's policed for the better. That's a better thing. But everybody, going back to your original point, everybody learned how to do everything outside. You learned how to deal with people. You learned how to make friends. You learned to how to solve your own problems. Not everybody ran home and had their parents fight their own battles for them. I mean, you got in scraps. You fell off your bike and you didn't run home and it wasn't the end of the world. You take I hate to use it.
You smash somebody's dirt bike into a tree and prevent their front fairing. I mean,
So we rode bikes with no
Sounds
helmets,
personal.
jumped sketchy ramps, all that stuff that people don't think. We were feral. I mean, we went outside, like on summer vacation, you were outside all day. I mean, I say this all the time to people that don't understand it, and these guys will, and you will too. The biggest punishment was you couldn't go outside. Now you can't get kids to go outside. You punch somebody and go outside and do something.
Yeah, I don't. It's terrifying to have little kids and try to figure out like, well, how am I gonna do it different when it's how everyone's doing it now?
Right.
It's
Right.
like, well, I wanna make my kids stay outside and not let them in, and I'm like, are the neighbors gonna call the cops on me?
Yeah. It's
Well, let's
crazy.
get in the house, like, yeah.
Yeah, some of my bigger fears are having somebody that's got a cell phone because neither one of my kids do, and they're showing them inappropriate stuff that I had to find in the woods when I was a kid. That will, like an old Playboy or something like that, and they're showing them stuff on their phone that they're not age appropriate just because they have, some kind of access to something they shouldn't have. That's a parent's fear. Things that we had to be over 18 to see, or you had to sneak around. Oh, somebody's got something that it was a thing. Now it's not a thing.
Do a whole episode on why kids today are screwed.
Yeah. I mean,
We can talk about how great Gen X is. It's true.
I
we're
mean,
awesome.
I see these TikToks all the time, and people don't believe the Gen X perspective. It's like we were built tough. Well, I think we are officially, sorry, Chris, we're the last generation of really, really tough, common sense. We were grown outside, and that's it. Both of the parents.
Is what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, oh yeah. And I think
That's what happens when your grandparents went through the Great Depression and went to war for 5 years.
Yeah, and volunteered for it, Ed. There was no draft. They volunteered for it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But yeah, Joe, I mean, I'm so glad that Ed had you come on the podcast.
Joe, now it's your time, man. You got a 90-second plug, man. It's your turn. Tell contact information, like how to get in touch with you, like good projects coming up, stuff like that.
All right. So before Joe takes us home, I just want to say that I hope that we can make a connection going, forward, that we can, have Joe on from time to time, talk about stuff, talk about, whether it's maybe Joe can make a podcast appearance and just shoot the shit with us, or we'll work it out, Joe. So I just want to say from us, especially from me, I'm very happy that Ed reached out to you and we made a connection, hopefully, and we can continue. I always ask everybody that comes on that it's not just a one-time thing, that we can continue to grow together. You're probably way ahead of us, but I'm just saying that, as Gen X guys, we can make that brotherly connection and take it forward from here.
I love that. It was great meeting you guys. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yep. So like Ed said,
come hang out, talk Bruins, talk whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that after the Bruins game. So
Joe, you see the logo in back of me? We're not talking Bruins. That's America's team. Yeah, everybody that comes on here, it's gonna bash and throw it in my face.
Don't worry, Joe. We used to running them off.
Did you know they won in overtime tonight? I don't know if you.
I don't follow AHL teams. I watch real sports.
Love
But
it.
anyways, not all kidding aside, fantastic, Joe. We're gonna wrap it up. We're almost at 11 o'clock, so let's bring us home with everything that you do and where people can reach out and get in touch with you and what you got going on. So take it away, take us home.
Awesome. Thanks again, guys. So I would say that the best place to see what I'm up to is going to be on Instagram, on Every Day as a Canvas. That's where I'm putting content the most. If you're interested in seeing what I'm doing kind of on the corporate side with my business clients, that's going to be spin350.com. And as far as what I have going on right now, I just did a really cool can design for a pina colada drink with Bruno Mars's rum company.
Sweet.
The rum, really good. So that's coming out this summer. So look for that. It's called the Selvaray Skinny Pina Colada in a can. And then as far as music, I'm trying to think if I'm doing any. Well, so I may be doing a Biggie music video with a remix that I did. That's kind of in the works right now, but it's halfway done, so that could be coming out soon as well. So a couple fun projects, but yeah, definitely Every Day as a Canvas, and everydaysacanvas.com is curated projects, kind of like my favorite projects and projects that people have asked me to put out. So that's another place.
All right.
And then joelyons.us is everything I do in one spot. So that's the Spin 350 stuff, the Every Day as a Canvas stuff, speaking engagements, the nonprofits I'm involved with, everything in one place.
All right.
Awesome.
So, Ed, are you ready to wrap this up?
I'm just gonna say, hey, this is a big Tony's goodbye. Thank you, Snoil.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Just
Joe.
stay on when we kick off, man. When we sign off, okay?
You got it.
Thanks, Joe.
All right.